When you want an avoidant to respect you, the first keynote is simple but brutal: you don't chase, you don't beg, and you don't over-explain. Because chasing doesn't communicate love to an avoidant the way you think it does. Chasing communicates that you can be pulled. Begging communicates that your standards are negotiable. Over-explaining communicates that you will keep performing emotionally until they finally feel comfortable. And none of that earns respect. It earns access. It earns temporary attention. It earns a few warm moments that fade the second they feel pressure again. But respect comes from something different: self-leadership. An avoidant's nervous system is highly sensitive to pressure. When you chase, they feel pursued. When they feel pursued, they feel trapped. And when they feel trapped, they back away. But the deeper issue is not the backing away. The deeper issue is what your chasing does to the dynamic. It turns the relationship into a system where distance equals power. Every time they withdraw and you rush forward, you teach them a rule. My silence moves you. That rule is addictive. Not because they're evil, but because it gives them control. They can regulate themselves with distance and still keep your attention, your emotional energy, your effort. That's why chasing often produces the opposite of what you want. You want closeness. You want clarity. You want reassurance. But chasing creates a loop where they don't have to provide those things, because your effort keeps the bond alive anyway. You become the engine. They become the passenger. And an avoidant might enjoy the comfort of being wanted, but they do not respect the version of you that abandons yourself just to keep them near. Respect begins the moment you stop abandoning yourself. This does not mean you become cold, arrogant, or cruel. It means you become clear. You say what you mean once. You don't keep repeating it in different emotional costumes. You don't turn your dignity into a sales pitch. You don't write 5 paragraphs hoping the 5th one will finally make them understand. You understand something bigger. People don't change because you explain more. They change because consequences become real. So when an avoidant goes silent, you don't chase silence with more noise. You don't beg for crumbs. You don't perform your pain to be chosen. You simply step back into your own life. That step back does something powerful. It removes the reward for withdrawal. And when withdrawal stops being rewarded, it loses power. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a difference between communication and chasing. Communication is direct, brief, and calm. Chasing is repeated, emotional, urgent, and self-erasing. Communication sounds like, I want consistency. If you need space, tell me and give a time to reconnect. Chasing sounds like, please just talk to me. I don't understand. I'll do anything. What did I do wrong? I'm sorry, I miss you. Communication respects you. Chasing abandons you. And avoidance, more than most people, respond to self-respect. Because they live in a world where emotional intensity often feels unsafe. When you over-explain, it feels like intensity. When you beg, it feels like emotional weight. When you chase, it feels like pressure. But when you speak once and then relax into your life, it feels grounded. It feels like strength. It feels like a person with a spine. That spine is what they respect. It also creates a healthy uncertainty they can't control. When you chase, they know you're still there. They know you're still waiting. They know the door is open. When you stop chasing, they don't know. They can't predict you. And that unpredictability isn't a game. It's a natural consequence of you no longer being emotionally available on demand. They feel the shift. They realize you are not guaranteed. And nothing triggers respect faster than realizing someone is not guaranteed. This is why one calm sentence followed by silence can do more than 100 emotional paragraphs. Because calm signals power. Power is not aggression. Power is self-containment. Power is being able to feel emotion without letting emotion run your behavior. And the avoidance deepest test is this: can this person stay stable? Or will they collapse into pursuit every time I withdraw? When you pass that test, respect grows. When you fail that test repeatedly, the dynamic becomes predictable. And what becomes predictable becomes controllable. Now here's the part that most people miss: not chasing is not just a strategy to get them back. It's a standard you live by, whether they come back or not. Because if your boundary only exists to manipulate their response, it's not a boundary, it's a tactic. Avoidance can sense tactics. They may still react, but it won't build real respect. Real respect is built when you don't fold, even when you miss them, even when you feel lonely, even when you're tempted to send that one extra message. So you do this instead: you say your piece once, with dignity, and you let the silence speak. If they return and act like nothing happened, you don't accept the reset. You stay calm and you require repair. If they breadcrumb, you don't reward crumbs. If they disappear again, you step back again. Not with drama, with consistency. Because respect is not earned by one boundary line. It's earned by the repetition of you honoring yourself. And when you become that consistent, something changes in their mind. They start associating you with consequences and standards, not emotional chaos. They start seeing you as someone they can't manipulate with distance. They start realizing that access to you is not automatic. And that's when respect appears, because respect is born when someone understands they cannot control you through your hunger for them. So keynote 1 is the foundation: stop chasing. Stop begging. Stop over-explaining. Speak once, clearly, calmly. Then return to your life. Not to punish them, not to win, but because the moment you stop chasing someone who keeps withdrawing, you stop making your love cheap. You stop turning your heart into a place that can be visited only when it's convenient. You become the kind of person whose presence is earned, not assumed. And that is the version of you that even an avoidant cannot help but respect. Boundaries earn an avoidant's respect only when they are real. And real means you actually follow through. An avoidant can hear 1,000 emotional speeches and still stay the same. But they will pay attention when your behavior becomes consistent and your standards become non-negotiable. Because avoidants are not primarily convinced by words. They are convinced by consequences. Not harsh consequences, not revenge, not drama, calm consequences. The kind that quietly says, this is what I accept, and this is what I don't. A lot of people think setting boundaries is about sounding strong. It's not. It's about being stable. You can say the perfect sentence, I won't tolerate hot and cold anymore. And if you keep accepting hot and cold, the boundary becomes noise. In fact, it can backfire. Because every time you announce a boundary and then break it for them, you train them to believe your standards are negotiable. You teach them that your pain has no power. You teach them that your words are emotional, but your behavior is available. And avoidants do not respect what is always available. They might enjoy it. They might feel comforted by it. They might even lean on it. But respect comes from structure. Respect comes from predictability on your side. When you become predictable in self-respect, you become safe and strong at the same time. Safe because you are consistent, and strong because you don't fold. Here's what happens in an avoidant dynamic. The avoidant withdraws. You panic, you chase. They return. You soften. Then they withdraw again. Your nervous system becomes the yo while theirs stays protected. The relationship starts revolving around their comfort. Your boundaries become emotional reactions rather than lived standards. And the avoidant learns that your limit is not real, it's just a phase you go through when you're triggered. So the second keynote is this: boundaries must be behavioral, not emotional. A behavioral boundary is simple. If X happens, I will do Y. An emotional boundary is vague. I can't take this anymore. Avoidants respond to behavioral boundaries because they remove confusion. They don't require mind reading. They don't become endless conversations. They are clear, brief, and enforceable. For example, if you need space, tell me and give me a time you'll reconnect. If you disappear without communication, I will step back and stop engaging until we can talk respectfully. That's a boundary. It's not a threat, it's a map. Now the most important part, follow through. Follow through is not punishing them. It is protecting you. It is teaching the relationship what is required to have access to your energy. And this is where respect grows, because respect grows when your behavior matches your words, especially when emotions are high, because the avoidant will test it. Not always consciously, but patterns test structure. If they've been allowed to withdraw and return without consequences, their nervous system expects that to continue. So when you set a boundary, they may disappear again. They may breadcrumb. They may act casual. They may come back with, "Hey," as if nothing happened. They're checking whether your boundary is real or performative. If you fold, you teach them it's performative. If you stay steady, you teach them it's real. And steadiness is what earns respect. Not harshness, not lectures, not long explanations. Steadiness. A calm follow-through can look like this: they disappear for days, then return like normal. You don't explode. You don't punish. You simply don't reward the reset. You respond with clarity. I'm open to talking, but we need to address what happened. I'm not doing disappearing anymore. If they dodge, you step back. If they keep trying to act normal, you remain polite but unavailable for intimacy. That's follow through. Because intimacy is a privilege, not a default. Avoidants often want access to closeness when it feels good and distance when it feels hard. Boundaries teach the nervous system a new rule: closeness requires consistency. If you want to be close to me, you can't disappear and then return without repair. You can't hurt me and then act like nothing happened. You can't keep me in uncertainty and still receive my full warmth. And ladies and gentlemen, this is where avoidants start respecting you. Not because you're intimidating, but because you're not controllable through your longing. You are not pulled off your center by their distance. You don't collapse into over-explaining. You don't bargain with yourself. You don't water down your needs to keep them comfortable. You stay you. That's respect. Respect is an avoidant realizing, this person doesn't need me to be okay, and they won't sacrifice themselves to keep me. Now, boundaries also create emotional safety for them, even if they don't admit it. Because avoidants secretly fear chaos. They fear endless emotional spirals. They fear unpredictable reactions. When you set a clear boundary and follow it calmly, you reduce chaos. You create a container. They know what happens if they withdraw. They know what is required to repair. They know where the line is. That structure can actually make intimacy feel safer, because it's not a messy emotional free-for-all. It's clear. So keynote 2 isn't be strict. It's be consistent. Say less, mean it, do it. Not as a performance to make them chase. Not as a tactic to manipulate their return. As a standard for your life. And when your standards become consistent, the avoidant either rises into respect, or they exit because they can no longer survive on vague access. Either way, you win. Because you stop living in a relationship where your boundaries are spoken, but not honored. Where your needs are expressed but not protected, and where your heart is constantly negotiating for what should be basic consistency, communication, and care. An avoidant respects you more when you stay calm during conflict, because calm signals emotional strength, not emotional chaos. And for an avoidant nervous system, chaos is danger. They don't just dislike arguments. They often experience emotional intensity as a threat to their freedom, their identity, and their control. That's why they shut down, withdraw, or act cold when things get heated. Not always because they don't care, but because their body is trying to escape what it believes will overwhelm them. So when you remain grounded in conflict, you do two powerful things at once. You protect your dignity, and you make closeness feel safer. You become the kind of person who doesn't explode, doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't spiral, and doesn't collapse. You become steady. And steadiness is the language avoidants understand. Let's be real, in a conflict with an avoidant, it's easy to get pulled into the worst version of yourself. Their silence can trigger your anxiety. Their cold tone can trigger your panic. Their avoidance can make you over-explain. Their distancing can make you raise your voice just to be heard. And once the conflict becomes emotionally loud, the avoidant feels justified to withdraw even more. They can point to your intensity and say, "See, this is why I need space." Even if your intensity was a reaction to their absence, the outcome becomes the same. You're the emotional one. They're the calm one. And the real issue never gets repaired. Calm breaks that pattern. Calm means you keep your voice low, your sentences short, and your message clear. Calm means you don't argue for your worth. Calm means you don't chase them into the conversation. Calm means you don't try to win, you try to resolve. And this is what earns respect. It shows you have self-control. It shows you can handle uncomfortable feelings without turning them into chaos. Avoidants respect self-control because they associate it with safety. When someone stays calm, the avoidant's nervous system doesn't have to go into fight or flight. There's less threat, less pressure, less emotional flooding. They can stay present longer. They can listen longer. They can respond without feeling attacked. Even if they don't fully show it, calm reduces their urge to run. But calm doesn't mean passive. Calm is not silence. Calm is not swallowing your needs. Calm is not pretending you're fine. Calm is the ability to express the truth without losing yourself. Here's what calm looks like in practice. You name one issue, one impact, one request. You don't bring the whole history. You don't add 10 examples. You don't list every time they've disappointed you. You keep it clean. When you disappeared after we disagreed, I felt dismissed. Next time I need a simple message that you need space and when you'll reconnect. That is calm. That is leadership. That is the opposite of chaos. And leadership is what earns respect. Because an avoidant is often waiting for the conversation to become messy so they can escape. Not consciously like a villain, but subconsciously like a nervous system protecting itself. When you stay calm, you remove the escape route. You don't give them chaos to point at. You don't give them emotional overload as an excuse. You keep the focus on behavior. The moment you keep conflict behavior based rather than emotion flooded, you gain power. Not power over them. Power over yourself. And an avoidant respects someone who has power over themselves, because it means they can't manipulate you with silence. They can't destabilize you easily. They can't make you beg. They can't make you lose your center. You stay stable, and stability is intimidating in a quiet way, because it signals, I will address problems like an adult, and I will leave if they don't change. Now here is the key. Calm also requires timing. Avoidants shut down when they feel ambushed. So calm includes choosing a container that reduces threat. Can we talk tonight for 15 minutes? That's calm. It's specific, limited, and respectful. It makes the conversation feel manageable. A 15-minute container is less terrifying than an open-ended emotional marathon. Avoidants often cooperate more when they know the conversation won't last forever. Calm also means you don't chase them if they refuse. You say your truth once. If they shut down, you don't escalate. You pause. You step back. You let consequence speak. Because calm without consequence becomes tolerating. Calm must be paired with standards. So you can be calm and still firm. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to solve. If you're not willing to talk, I'm going to step back. That's respect language. It's clear. It's not emotional blackmail. It's boundaries. And ladies and gentlemen, this is what calm does to an avoidant. It forces them to face the real issue without the distraction of emotional chaos. It removes the drama they can blame. It removes the intensity they can run from. It leaves only one question: will I show up, or will I lose access to a stable person? That's why calm earns the most respect. Because calm says, I can feel deeply without losing control. Calm says, I won't beg. Calm says, I won't explode. Calm says, I won't accept disrespect. Calm says, I'm safe, but I'm not soft in the way that lets you hurt me. And that combination, safety plus strength, is the most respect-provoking energy an avoidant can experience. Avoidants respect you most when you require repair, not resets, because resetting is the avoidant's favorite escape hatch. A reset is when they hurt you, withdraw, go quiet, or act cold, then return later acting normal, like the rupture never happened. It's their way of deleting discomfort without doing the work of accountability. And if you accept resets, the relationship becomes a place where your pain gets erased instead of healed. But when you require repair, something changes in their nervous system. They realize access to you comes with responsibility. Repair is not drama. Repair is maturity. Repair means the rupture is acknowledged, the impact is validated, the behavior is addressed, and a new plan is made so it doesn't repeat. It's not an emotional trial. It's not you attacking them. It's you saying calmly, "We are not moving forward while the wound is still open." And that is the moment an avoidant starts respecting you, because most avoidants are used to getting away with time as their solution. Time is not repair. Time is avoidance if nothing changes. Avoidants are highly skilled at using time and distance to calm themselves. When they feel uncomfortable, after conflict, after your tears, after their guilt, their body wants relief. And withdrawal gives relief. So they withdraw. Then they return when they feel safe again. And they expect the relationship to restart where they left it. If you let it restart, you teach them a dangerous rule: I can avoid accountability and still keep the relationship. That rule makes you emotionally unsafe. Because now every time something hurts, you're not just dealing with the hurt, you're also dealing with the fear that it will never be repaired. You start becoming hypervigilant. You start scanning for the next disappearance. You start walking on eggshells. You start tolerating things you shouldn't tolerate just to keep the peace. And the avoidant learns they don't have to grow, because you will carry the emotional consequences for both of you. When you require repair, you stop carrying it alone. You stop being the one who swallows pain so we can just move on. You stop rewarding the reset with closeness. You stop giving intimacy to someone who hasn't earned back safety. And that's why it earns respect. It shows you have standards even when emotions are high. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the difference between being loving and being available for neglect. Love without repair becomes self-abandonment. So what does require repair actually look like? It looks like calm insistence and behavioral structure. You don't make it a lecture. You keep it clean. One incident, one impact, one request. When you disappeared after that conversation, I felt abandoned. I need us to talk about it and agree on how we handle space next time. That's repair. It's specific. It's manageable. It gives them a path. Avoidance shut down with emotional flooding, so you keep it focused and time limited. You can say, "Can we do 15 minutes tonight or tomorrow?" This lowers their threat response. It shows you're not trying to trap them in a marathon. You're trying to build a healthier pattern. Now here's the part that earns the most respect: what you do if they refuse. Many people say they require repair, but then they fold the moment the avoidant acts annoyed, distant, or cold. Because the avoidant's irritation can feel like rejection. It can trigger your fear of losing them, and then you abandon your standard to keep them close. That is the moment the avoidant loses respect. Not because you're bad, but because your boundary proved negotiable. So requiring repair means you don't return to normal if they won't repair. You can be polite, but you don't give full access. You don't offer the warmth they didn't earn. You don't jump back into flirting, intimacy, constant texting, emotional caretaking. You stay steady. You hold the line. Not to punish them, but to protect your nervous system and teach the relationship a new rule. Rupture must be repaired before closeness resumes. That rule is what creates safety. And here's the truth. Avoidants often respect what they cannot bypass. If they can bypass your pain with silence and time, they will. Not because they're monsters, but because their nervous system chooses the easiest route to relief. But when you calmly block the bypass, when you refuse to act normal, until the issue is addressed, you force them into adulthood. You force them to either step up or step out. This is where you see who they really are. A maturing avoidant will eventually soften. They might not be perfect, but they'll try. They'll acknowledge. They'll learn how to talk. They'll make small, consistent changes. They'll stop using withdrawal as the only tool. They'll accept your standards because they value you. An avoidant who only wants comfort will resist. They'll call you dramatic. They'll say you're holding grudges. They'll try to rush you into normal. They'll blame your feelings. They'll act like your need for repair is the problem. That's not love. That's avoidance protecting itself. So keynote 4 is the respect line. You require repair, not resets. You don't accept a relationship where the only resolution is time passing. You don't accept closeness that ignores harm. You don't accept a peace that's built on your silence. You stay calm. You stay clear, and you stay consistent. And in that steadiness, an avoidant learns something they may have never learned before. Access to a mature, stable person is not free. It requires accountability. It requires repair. And if they want you, they must grow. Avoidants respect you the most when you don't accept crumbs as connection, because crumbs reveal the truth of the dynamic. They want access without investment. Breadcrumbing is when they offer small, low-effort signals. Hey, a like, a random check-in, a late-night message, a meme, a short compliment. Just enough to keep you emotionally attached, but not enough to build anything stable. And if you reward crumbs with full access to your heart, you train them to keep giving crumbs. Not because they're calculating like a villain, but because the nervous system repeats what works. Crumbs are not love. Crumbs are a test. They're testing. Are you still there? They're testing. Do I still matter? They're testing. Can I get warmth without responsibility? They're testing. Can I calm my loneliness without changing my behavior? When you respond to crumbs with immediate availability, long messages, reassurance, emotional caretaking, or intimacy, you answer that test for them. Yes. You can have me with almost nothing. And once they learn that, respect drops. Because respect rises when access has standards. Respect drops when access is automatic. Ladies and gentlemen, an avoidant can be attracted to your softness, but they will respect your structure. Structure means your heart is not a vending machine. They don't put in one coin and get a full meal. They don't disappear for 2 weeks and return with, "miss you," and receive the same intimacy they had before. They don't avoid repair and still receive your emotional labor. They don't get relationship benefits from friendship, level effort. This is why crumbs are so dangerous. They trigger your hope. They activate your attachment. They make you feel chosen for a second, and that second can make you forget the pattern. You start thinking, maybe they're coming back. Maybe they miss me. Maybe they're changing. And then, because you want it to be true, you pour in more. You respond fast. You stay available. You reopen. You soften. You become warm again. And the avoidance nervous system relaxes because they regained access. Then, once they feel regulated again, their fear of closeness returns, and they pull away again. That's how the cycle repeats: crumbs, reward, withdrawal, repeat. The most respectful thing you can do for yourself is not to punish them, but to stop rewarding the breadcrumb pattern. This doesn't mean you become rude. It means you become selective. Warm but not wide open. Kind but not eager. Available but not accessible to inconsistency. For example, if they send a, you don't reply with an emotional paragraph. You keep it neutral. Hey, what's up? If they stay vague, you don't keep carrying the conversation. You let it end. Because you're not here to entertain ambiguity. If they say, I miss you, but offer no plan, you don't melt. You respond with structure. I hear you. If you want to reconnect, I'm open to a real conversation and consistency. That one sentence is a filter. It separates longing from intention. Because respect is built when you require intention. Avoidants often live in a world of maybe. Maybe later, maybe soon. Maybe when I'm ready, maybe when things calm down. Maybe when you stop needing so much. Breadcrumbs keep the relationship in, maybe, without demanding a decision. And that's why accepting crumbs keeps you stuck. You stay emotionally invested in someone who hasn't chosen you clearly. You become loyal to potential, not reality. So the key is to treat crumbs as information, not as proof. Crumbs are proof of curiosity, not commitment. Crumbs are proof of access, seeking, not repair. Crumbs are proof of emotion in a moment, not consistency over time. And when you treat crumbs as information, you stop giving them power. Now here's the hard part: when you stop rewarding crumbs, you will likely see one of two reactions. One, they step up. They get clearer. They offer a real conversation. They show consistent behavior because they realize low effort doesn't work anymore. Two, they disappear. They pull back because they were never prepared to invest, they only wanted access. Either way you win. Because you stop training your heart to accept half love. And this is what earns the deepest respect from an avoidant. They realize you're not desperate for contact. You're not starving for attention. You're not impressed by small gestures. You are grounded. You have a life. You have standards. You're not mean, but you're not easily pulled. They can't control your emotions with a few crumbs, and that forces a new reality: if they want you, they must meet you. This also protects your nervous system. When you accept crumbs, you stay in an addiction cycle, high when they reach out, low when they vanish. Your body becomes conditioned to chase the next hit of attention. That's not romance. That's intermittent reinforcement. And avoidant dynamics often create that exact addiction, because the inconsistency makes the brain obsessed. Refusing crumbs breaks the addiction. It returns you to stability. So how do you refuse crumbs without turning cold? You choose responses that are calm, brief, and structured. You don't chase. You don't over-explain. You don't argue. You simply require a higher standard. I'm open to reconnecting, but I'm not doing hot and cold. If you want to talk, let's set a time. I'm not available for casual check-ins that go nowhere. Those lines aren't threats. They're boundaries. And boundaries are what avoidants respect most when they're real. Because the moment you stop accepting crumbs, you stop being controllable. You stop being the person who can be kept on standby. You stop being emotionally accessible without protection. You become the kind of person whose presence is earned, not assumed. And that is the moment an avoidant's nervous system starts treating you differently, not because you became harder, but because you became clearer.